Yeah, we're good.
All right. We are back and we are live. Let us know
Are
if
we
there's still
live?
an echo. Yes, we are. Let us know if there's
Where
still
are
an
we
echo.
live?
Refresh. Or just go back to the main YouTube page there on our channel, and then it should show up.
Oh,
They
yep, we
say
are.
no
We're
echo
good.
now.
No
Yeah.
echo.
Woo!
Echo
Everything
has
in the
been
world is
installed.
fixed. Everything is perfect. There's no problems anywhere at all whatsoever. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
We have lost like 3/4 of our viewers.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
This is for the hardcores, all right? They're just looking at the void. They're staring off into the nothingness. All right, guys.
At some point during this stream, I'm going to sprint down my stairs and sign for a package, so that'll be fun.
I mean, you should take your camera with you.
Well, considering my camera is an entire desktop computer, that'd be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, you should take it with you.
Just link it into the cameras in my basement on the 3D printers. Just start streaming Octoprint.
How many cameras do you have in your basement?
5 right now.
Okay, that's kind of suspicious is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right.
Or off to a good start.
No, we are officially live and everything is working, it seems. But just in case levels are not correct, do let us know. But it seems like everything is good. It's amazing. How many headphone experts do you need for good sound in a stream? Well, you probably don't even need any headphone experts. You probably just need a producer.
Probably the more
I was
you
just
have,
saying,
it's
like a
probably a
streaming
detriment,
expert.
to be honest.
What's that?
It's probably a detriment the more you have, to be honest. But
Oh, guys, don't use the super chat. I am for some reason unable to turn it off.
Are we still unable to turn off super
Yes,
chat?
I've tried.
thanks, YouTube.
What do you mean you've tried?
Anyway, welcome to today's stream.
Thank you, Grey Fox, though. Appreciate it. But yeah, don't send super chats.
All right. So, what are we talking about? We have some topics today.
Yes.
Obviously the title of this stream is "Are new headphones actually better than the old ones?" And I think it's good timing because we just did the HD 500 review. I'm currently wearing an HE6 SEV2, but HE6 is still an older headphone, and so I guess
it's not an older headphone.
It is older than some of the. It's not like it's fresh.
It's a
I
toddler.
can go and get my U70s. I don't know when those came out.
Okay, those are actually
Those are legitimately old.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's the question that I'm posed to you guys. We talk about like price to performance and diminishing returns. We know all that stuff, but the new stuff that's coming out. Let's talk about headphones first because IEMs are their own thing. Are headphones getting better?
Yes and no.
The question is to me, on average or at the peak,
Good point. Let's go with on average.
I'd say, yeah, I don't think that's ambiguous.
That they are
Yeah.
getting better.
Yeah.
On average, they're getting better, yeah.
Well, like look at your phone IEMs now and look at your phone IEMs 10 years ago.
I said
those
headphones,
are the most
not IEMs.
Okay, fine. Look at the headphones that you get at Best Buy now and look at the ones you got at Best Buy 10 years ago. Like you were talking about what, like a QC 15 or 25 then? Those were terrible. Or the original Beats Solo.
Right. And peak.
Please no one say that the Beats Solo 2 came out more than 10 years ago. I'll feel so old.
Maybe.
Buddy, do I have news for you?
So what about peak? Like the high end, like audiophile related stuff. Stuff like HD 600 came out in 1997.
DC 880 came out in 1980.
Yeah, but that's not a good headphone.
I was going to say, is that a
You're
good
not a
example
good
of
headphone.
something at the peak of headphones?
The LCD 2.2
in 1980,
and the
I
Beacon
think that
pads.
was
We
Yeah,
kind
we-
of have to mention vintage stacks with this, I feel like. Because
Well, yeah,
there
but
are
'cause-
genuinely some older stacks models which even today hold up incredibly well. I mean, they weren't exactly
old
commonplace.
Lambdas are basically
but
the same as modern ones, except for the leak thing.
Yeah.
Can I add an image to this stream? I'm adding an image. Here we go.
Sure.
Desktop.
This is Friday Madness.
There we go. Look in the middle of all of us. Look at that. Tell me that's not just the stunning image of perfection that's floating around over our heads.
And this is, I can't quite see the headphone.
That's an LCD 2.2, I believe.
with
It's an LC
with vegan pads.
2.2 with vegan pads, and that was released around between 2010 and 2012.
Man, in my brain, 2010 is still like 3 years ago.
I know. And by the way, the Beats Solo were released 13 years ago.
Okay, but when was the Solo 2? The Solo HD I was referencing is existing 13 years ago.
I can't tell you on that one.
I think
So-
the thing which has really changed is how accessible genuinely great headphones have become. Whilst I don't think that necessarily the very peak of headphones has kind of risen much, there's a bit more variety there, but I don't know if it's that's actually gotten loads better. But for if you any given amount of money that you wanted to spend, the options that you have available now at that given price point seem to be just so much better than they were otherwise. And I think there's a few exceptions, like the HD600. I mean, clearly that's a very, very good headphone for not that much money, but there's a lot more variety now as well.
Mm-hmm. You do have brands coming out with headphones that are at downgrades or at best side grades from headphones that they'd released previously. And we talked about this a little bit in the last stream, but it seems like a trend that's happening. I'm thinking of various versions of the Ananda, thinking of the HD660 S2, thinking of for a long time when Odyssey was doing those memory foam pads. They've certainly gone in the other direction now. They've made things a lot better than they were during that era, but that was at the time certainly not an upgrade. I suppose to me this gets a little bit to a question of, trying to identify what good is, and did anything change in the minds of, like the industry collectively? Or do you think that we're shooting for the same thing now that we were shooting for 10, 15 years ago?
Well, I mean, Harman's the obvious thing, right?
That's the big difference, right?
I think more common things are becoming more measurement focused than they ever were in the past. And that's to an extent enabling some things that are more affordable to become better. But some things were kind of already on target a long time ago. So it's kind of hard to say if those things are getting better. Everything is getting better as a whole, but have individual, like, are the headphones that are the best now better than the best were then?
I think I was going to say that maybe there's a little bit of a, just speaking about the measurements and stuff, there's a bit more of a degree of consistency to things at various stages throughout, music production, not just in what we're listening to. Because obviously the Harman research and stuff is great, but it has the assumption that there is some degree of consistency to what music is being produced on, right? Because if you look at the video that we I don't think it's out yet, but the HD600 mixing video, where those mixes sound very different. And if everyone was on a completely different sort of mixing production setup, then the types of headphones that would sound better for whatever it was you were listening to are going to be more varied. Whereas as measurements allow production setups to become flatter in frequency response, for example, there's going to be a more consistent target to what you might want to listen on.
I have a
One
question.
thing all of us can agree on is that
video. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
There's a paper that might be worth adding to that. I just remembered it.
I don't know if the
Don't
video's
think
fresh
it's
or
out
not.
yet.
I'm not editing it.
Andrew?
Sorry, I missed the question.
The mixing on different headphones.
What about it?
Is it like finalized? Because I have a paper that might be worth adding to it.
The filming's been done.
But
we can absolutely add stuff to it. I think Chrono's away on vacation right now, so that's probably why it's not out yet.
Right. And it's his video.
Yeah. So
one thing we can all agree on, though, is that DT990 is terrible.
Yes.
It's
mid.
No, that was the one. Okay, I don't want to spoil it.
Historically, it's mid. contemporarily, I think it's bad, but in the arc of headphone history, I think that when it came out, it was better than average, and now it is worse than average.
Well, yeah, the average has gotten better, as you were saying.
Yeah. Well, and
That
things were
answers
really
part of it.
bad in like 1985.
Right. So do you guys have like a particular era that you think the peak was at its best, or is that era right now? Whether for nostalgia reasons or otherwise.
It's hard for me not to look at some of the stuff that's out there today. Not just, well, I know we said just headphones, but Project Red, the HD 600, which, I mean, well, that's not necessarily right now, but Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS, some of the stuff that is available at just even under a few $100s in some cases is it's hard not to feel that that's the best it's been at that price point so far.
Blaine.
I didn't say it.
You did.
God, that
He has an obsession. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's funny because maybe it's also because of like where I was at various different stages, right? There was a time when I feel like it was like maybe 2016 when I think it was like the Utopia and the Allure came out roughly around then. And to me, and at the time that felt like it was a big step forward, industry wise. And I don't know if we've had similar kinds of like steps forward. It might just be that at the time it was like, I mean, the HD800 already existed, and that was a high-priced headphone at the time already. So it wasn't like that was that new, but something at $4,000. What's that?
And better than the Utopia.
Disagree.
I just saw a comment that said, "How did DMS break the HE1, and did he sell his car to pay for it?"
His car wouldn't pay for it.
Like it would, yeah, it'd get close. But it wouldn't
I mean, I like your car, but your car wouldn't pay for
it's
it.
right there, and yes, it's still broken.
Just glue it, buff it right out.
Yep. But yeah, I don't know if we've had like a similar kind of like thing as when those headphones came out since then. If anything, I think the industry has gone in the other direction, not necessarily gotten worse, but those things that maybe they would have been priced at a higher price in the past are now getting priced closer to $1,000. That seems to be kind of also the sweet spot for a lot of new stuff that comes out. I don't know. That's just my sense of it.
there's definitely a lot more competition now. People are paying more attention to it, it seems like, because for a long time, headphones were, I think, quite broadly considered something of a compromise for when you did not have access to, or it wasn't feasible to use speakers. Whereas now, I think they are getting a lot more respect as their own thing. And there's just so many more companies which are producing not just headphones broadly, but higher end headphones. It seems that it's a lot more competitive of a space nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. That pushes things forward, and it means that there's more to choose from, regardless of actual performance itself, and pushes prices down, because if you don't have the very best thing at a particular price point, you got to fix that one way or another.
Mm-hmm. All right. 1 second.
I mean,
there we go.
Hello again, and goodbye again. Anyway,
Fixed.
So from my point of view, like, if I was going to say when the headphones that I think were at the peak, that I think were the best, came out, it'd probably be like 2014, 2013, because like then you got the HE6, you got the HD800, you got, when did the LCD4 come out? A little bit before the Utopia?
It's been a while.
Around the same
Yeah, a little
time?
bit before, and then Tyler released his view about the technically impressive LCD4, Odyssey LCD4, and then said it wasn't good because the frequency response was kind of wonk, which it is.
Yeah. But I mean, some people like that sort of thing. Like there's a subset of people who like odd frequency responses. So I think like that would probably be the era I'd pick. It's since then things have gotten more expensive, but when I hear the current highest end stuff, it doesn't make me say, "Wow, that's so much better than the HG6. That's so much better than the HD800." And a lot of it has, if anything, wonkier FRs. So,
Right.
like,
I
mean,
I don't know.
I know that I really cheesed you off when I said I didn't really like this as far. That I said it was okay, but like versus the HG6 versus the HD800, I'm not sure I'd take it over them, and it's a lot more money.
Yeah, but now we have things like Bravura.
So we can get to that because that's an important one. But just on your comment about this as Vara, I can see it. I mean, it doesn't. It is something that like is very high on my list, but that doesn't mean that I would expect it to be the case for everybody. So I can totally see an HE6 being preferred. HE6 has better dynamics. But the other thing I was going to say is it might also be that the way like what things are being made for is the super fine grained stuff, like very specific FR relationships that people that there are some sort of colorations. We've talked about this in the past. They're being tuned intentionally to achieve a particular kind of sound. Like I'm thinking of closed back headphones. For the longest time, there was this idea that hey, we should try and make them sound like open back headphones. So they would try and do certain things with the FR, do with the tuning to make it sound more open, at the cost of naturalness or normalness or goodness in all aspects. And so it was like chasing that dragon, and now maybe it's like chasing a different dragon. How do we make it sound more detailed or whatever, right? And that's not necessarily going to indicate that it's better. It's just that they're trying to do, at least in the high end, it feels like that they're trying to do a particular thing, and oftentimes I think getting it wrong. And that's why I go back to headphones like the HD600. And we've talked about this to a certain extent, but it feels like, things that are newer, that are higher priced, are generally more esoteric. They're generally, like normal but good kind of caps out at around $500. And unless we're talking about something like the Bravura, and that's why that was interesting. That's one where it does seem like they were paying particularly close attention to measurements. So that's what I have to say about that.
Douglas hasn't talked yet on the decade, has he?
Oh, I've been sorting something that just popped into my DMs.
I like.
Oh gosh, should I even go into that story?
Cameron,
you know what I'm talking about.
I just sorted it, but
there's just some creators that are getting bothered by a certain unnamed audio company who came out and said like a lot of very racial comments over the last few years.
An audio company who said a lot of racial comments?
Yeah. Some
Funnily
very
enough,
unsavory ones.
If you threaten to send anthrax to a reviewer who doesn't like your headphones, people don't. Don't react.
It's
that guy.
It's Igor, of course. It's Igor.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there was some stuff with that guy, and he got into a channel and was bothering some people, and just kind of dealing with that.
It's funny how that happens, right? Like
fun stuff.
You're trying to do something, and then all of a sudden, the trolls come out of the woodwork.
Now we should
deal with it. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So I think that's that topic. Consensus.
Well, wait, hold on. You let Douglas slither away.
Okay,
I know.
slithering
Okay.
away.
Yeah, I can't slither away. Remind me of the question, and I'll go into.
So, well, I was actually more curious what you brought up the Bravura, because that is one that did come out after the Sonoma, and it seems like they're trying to pay attention to measurements in a particular way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's a good example of that. It's one of those headphones that is using DSP to some advantage, which I think that people have like I don't know, it's like kind of taboo to say that you're using DSP in a closed proprietary system, but at the same time, I don't see why, because it can yield incredible results like the Bravura.
I I have,
and I think it's a good example of like how things are getting better and better. There's
Oh yeah, we have
You are-
a very static Andrew.
frozen Andrew that you look very like very
Very
focused on what I'm
concerned.
talking about. Yeah.
All right.
You think about though, like DSP has become commonplace in consumer products for a while. So your Apple, Bose, all that stuff. And maybe that's why there's a negative connotation associated with it, but it's a technology that allows a lot of those products to become more and more competitive over time. And it's also, been awesome for things like the Focal Batiste. So I think that for products that have integrated amplification, which is becoming more common, and integrated DACs, which is becoming more common, it's an extremely useful tool to, get things the extra mile, and it can make a considerable difference in how you perceive the sound quality of it. I mean, take I was talking about this earlier, the nothing ear 1 to the ear 2. A DSP change makes a very considerable difference on how people are perceiving the sound quality. It's already got the DSP implemented, as to many of these things, so it might as well be taken advantage of.
I'm thinking of the Odyssey Maxwell as well.
Yeah, it's a great example.
Yeah, I'm actually working on I'm not sure if this video is going to make it out, but is one that I'm working on, which is basically a rant at it. People are crazy for not using EQ because it is the single best value thing that you can do to make your sound better in all cases, and there's no reason not to do it.
I have some anti reasons for that.
Okay, go for it.
So I agree with you, but EQ is such a massive pain for me to use. So
blessed be Rune.
So here's the thing: it's a bit platform dependent. So if I'm using a Windows machine and only sitting at this one machine, it's very easy to have my consistent EQ profile set up for the headphone that I'm using. I could set up multiple profiles for multiple headphones as well, but I do, a lot of my personal stuff on a Windows PC, and then I do my editing and work on a Mac, and then I might play some games on an Xbox that I don't play on a PC because there's some exclusives, and then I might listen on the go on my phone with, this Quest style. And then I might plug up to my record player, and I might be using 10 different headphones to do all of those things. And getting consistent profiles across all of that for all of the various headphones I have in a way that's easy to switch across all those platforms is near impossible for me.
I don't know if you need to go. So to me, I was kind of thinking of it in the context of something else. I was thinking it more in the context of like when you get headphones like the Odyssey Maxwell, it shows you what they want. It shows you what people can do if given a particular connection type, and I think that's to me at least, it's like clear evidence that like the more we move in that direction, the better things will get. But at the same time, for the rest of what we're doing here, headphones like these, it's up to us to do it. And I will absolutely concede that Apple is the problem because it's not easy to affect the output stack as it is on a Windows machine,
Right.
or say you have like a Qlux 5K or something like that. But I tend to recommend, if people aren't going to EQ, or if they're put off by the idea of EQ, they should try and find something that is mostly normal, or where they only really need to make 1 or 2 adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you're so antithetical to, or like so like antagonistic to the idea of EQ, it kind of locks off a lot that is potentially great, both when it comes to products like the Maxwell, but also experiences that if EQ weren't applied, it'd be like, it's okay.
Right.
But with EQ, it's like, holy shit, this is amazing, right? So I feel like it's such a narrow-minded view of what audio can be. If you
I think EQ is good, and everyone should be like open to it. I think the difficulties more come with, or at least for me, the difficulties come with the implementation being difficult to consistently do across my platforms. But if I was just sitting at my one computer and using that, and just using one headphone, that would 100% be the case, and I would just leave it set up that way.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I think I don't know. I have a different complaint about EQ.
Oh, sorry.
Like,
what is it about streaming right now? Are we missing something?
Oh, we were helping with a thing at the
Oh,
same
okay.
time.
Oh, gotcha,
earlier.
gotcha. Okay.
Oh, I see. This is related to the Discord, the Telegram.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Blaine. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'm used to being talked to. It's the thing when you're the graph guy. They just drag you out of the closet when they need you to make a stream look sciencey.
There
Crap,
was
man.
somebody. I think Lone Star was in this one too, saying, "I hope it's not all about FR stuff again."
Yes, he was.
Graph guys showed up again.
Oh, but no, I mean, like, I think the biggest issue I have with EQ is that it's not really that approachable to new people, like people who are, maybe someone who's enthusiastic enough to get, an HD600, a Sundara, or whatever, maybe like a $100-$200 DAC amp combo, whatever, but who doesn't really want to spend a ton of time learning how FR works. Because, I mean, like, we kind of, particularly us four, we're sort of assuming, oh, well, of course, if you're into headphones, you're going to spend time understanding frequency response plots and target response and all that stuff. Normal people don't want to do this. Who wants to do that? We want to do this because we're freaks.
But that's why I say, if you are not a freak like us, which most people are not, get something where doing the adjustment is the easiest thing in the world, where you don't need to look at graphs, where you can say, this sounds pretty good, sound for whatever sound signature that people might want, but I want more bass or I want more treble. In that case, you don't need to go and buy a new headphone.
I'm just gonna shill Rune again for a minute. Just to be clear, I don't get paid by Rune. I just really like it. But like they released an update recently for Rune Arc. So as well as taking your library like outside of the house and stuff, you can do all of the EQ on it and stuff. And even just like on your phone, you can it's just all there. Just do it however you like. It's super easy. Get Rune if you haven't already. It's really good and makes EQ very easy.
Thing
That's
there,
a nice
though,
phone. Are you sponsored by that phone?
Rune is not
no,
free.
Samsung hit me up.
Nice. Yeah, Samsung hit both of us up, dude.
I would also like one of those phones if they're just giving them out.
Well, the first thing is you
can't-
shill Rune, then Samsung reaches out to you.
Yeah, at least he's not shilling Red. So
You say that my Red Commission's bought that phone.
See, now that's what people will actually think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the glowy phone that does this.
But yeah, no, my point is that Rune isn't free, and I like the idea of giving people the best value suggestions, right? Which is like just EQ the headphones, just add your bass shelf. Obviously,
I hope
there's
Spotify
great...
or something includes EQ into
yeah, it would be great.
It would just make it immediately so much more accessible and easy to get.
Didn't they used to?
Yeah,
Like,
actually, there is.
used to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh. Is there still?
I don't know.
It was a really shitty PEQ. Not
Yeah.
PEQ, sorry, GEQ, but they used to have an GEQ.
Yeah.
Okay, so Griffin says, has EQ just stinky? Yeah, that sounds
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of consumer things with EQ. I mean, literally, this is taboo. I know. I'm wearing a Bose headphone right now, though. And this one has an EQ you can bake into it using the Bose app, and it's very simple. It's just like bass, mids, treble. It's the QC45, which was a little bit treble sharp. And in their app, you can just go to like -2 on treble, and then it's right at sloped diffuse field. So it's just like open app, you're done.
They put the EQ in the right place, which it is annoying when companies put it in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, like,
which I've seen that too.
Simple EQ is good, but if you have a badly tuned headphone, then it doesn't help. Or makes things way worse.
Yeah.
Someone asked what your speakers are, Cameron.
These are Focal Sopra number 3s. They're not mine. They are on kind loan from Focal. I did ask for these specifically though because I really, really like them, and I'm quite enjoying them. But,
right.
Thank you, Focal, very much for letting me borrow these.
Okay. We have other topics. Let's see if I can. That was topic number 1. Our headphones getting better. Well, actually, we didn't talk about the IEMs thing because in that case, I think the answer is probably.
Year 4.
Well,
IEMs, don't you mean earbuds? Like
no, but
these?
actually, as
I'll kill you, Douglas.
as listener was saying, there are some previous IMs that are closer to the 5128 results, right? So that we just didn't really recognize at the time because everybody was using 711, which is kind of interesting. But I do think by and large they're getting better than they were before, even like a couple of years ago, and they're getting cheaper. So that's a good thing.
Looney Luna says we should rebrand EQ as headphone calibration and more people will be into it. Nobody is arguing about the value of monitor calibration. Ironically, I am, but I think that you're very correct for the majority of people.
Could call it instead of room correction, it's like ear correction, head correction, pad
Head
volume correction.
sounds more involved.
Yeah. Okay. Next topic. Topic number 2. Individual preferences versus collective preferences. These are your topics here, Golden. So I'm just running with those. How different are they really?
Yeah, and if anyone has any suggestions for things we should talk about as well, put them
I
in
have a
the live
suggestion.
chat.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Wait, so I'm sorry, repeat the question one
Well,
more
no,
time.
but you ate Cameron saying if the chat wants us to talk about something, they should mention it.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
But-
not
but
you,
we should-
Douglas. Jesus.
So, anyways, individual
Poor
preference
Douglas.
versus collective preference. How different are they really? This relates to the dominant segments, I imagine. And Cameron, maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit. what your thoughts
No,
are.
I'm not actually in a good position to do that. So I'd probably
Okay.
let you all plane.
All right, in that case, I suppose for me, what would be interesting here is, if we say, X result, let's say a 10 decibel tilt is preferred for bass to treble delta is preferred by the large segment. Let's just imagine that it is. How are people within that segment going to receive a result like that? And is it going to be the same? Is everybody going to receive it equally? I suppose is my question here.
Because the misconception amongst people quite often is that the Harman curve is an exact line that represents exactly what you should like. That is the preference, which is not what the research says. And yeah, it's one of those things where how different in terms of either just the overall confidence intervals or any particular patterns which may have emerged, be it just bass shelves and things, for example. But is there anything else which you guys think either should be looked into more, or interesting things which exists in the research already, which you think should be talked about more?
Well, I did remember seeing the clustering, right, of preferences.
You're referring to Olive Welty and Kansar
Yeah.
Report 2019?
In the segment.
Yeah.
So,
Segmentation of listeners based on their preferred sound
Yeah.
quality profiles, yada yada.
And also at CanGem New York in Sean's presentation, I believe he showed some of the clustering as well. And even within the largest group, there was still like sub clusters of preferences. And so I think with that more fine-grained look, that kind of provides a more complete picture than just 64% is in this, it is in this group, right? Within that group, you still have, subclusters. And I think that kind of that's at least sort of how I kind of think about that question.
Cool. And even if it was normally distributed inside that group, that still means that every individual, it's normally distributed across a given like range, right? So there'd still
Yeah.
be people who prefer a little more, a little less bass, a little
Now-
more, a little less treble.
I suppose where I am a bit unsure is if some of those preferences would change if, say, for example, your bass to treble delta was 10 dB. So like it would fit for that, 64% or whatever the largest group is. But you have an ear canal such that you prefer less ear gain. And does that skew where you fall relative to the norm.
So are you assuming an in-ear headphone here?
No, or well, I mean, yeah, I was thinking of it in terms of in-ears, yeah, but
Yeah, because like for pure ear canal, it really probably shouldn't change too much between over-ear headphones. Like different ear canal probably, unless it was like just at least intuitively to me, I would
Mhm.
expect them to have pretty similar effects as they would to speakers, right? And I mean, again, people have different speaker preferences, but I don't
Mhm.
think that that's, at least I am not aware of anything that says that that's due to differences in HRTF.
Right. So, but here's what I'm thinking though. Like, say you have like a perfectly matched DFHRTF response, and it's
Mhm.
tilted to 10. It's 10 decibel tilted,
Mhm.
and so it's going to be reasonably well received by the majority of listeners. However, somebody who might fit within that segment ordinarily of bass to treble delta of 10 decibels doesn't like it. Let's say it is for an IEM, for example, because it has too much energy at 3 kilohertz specifically. Now that I'm thinking of that as a very particular example, and the answer to that person might be, "Well, just tilt it more." But then it sounds too dark to them, and they don't like,
Mhm.
they're they're not actually in the next segment. It just sounds too dark to them.
I don't think there's
Right.
any doubt
So
that people are like sensitive to very specific frequencies in general. Like, I know for a fact that I do not like headphones with a ton of 4 kilohertz. I know other people that are sensitive in the same way for 5 or 6 kilohertz.
and there's the inverse. I don't mind the HD 800 peak.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I find for me that the shape of the region around 3 kilohertz really impacts whether something sounds very like it can go from being really quite shouty to me to totally fine within 2 or 3
Yeah.
dB.
Yeah. Yeah, recesses around. Well, this is something. So there's a mystery headphone that I have that Zerviews has that we've been talking back and forth on. And it, to me, sounds brighter than the Ananda Nano.
Is
But
this the
I
one that
know
you guys
that
were
the
talking about on Twitter?
disagreeing on, yeah,
Yeah.
on Twitter, yeah. But the Ananda Nano shows a
Ananda
similar
Nandos.
Nandos. Ananda
Spicy
Nandos shows a
sounding.
similar peak at the top of the treble, but the rest of the treble is similarly elevated. Whereas the headphones Z and I disagree on, it has, a good bit of 3K, and then it has this peak in the upper treble and a recess in between.
Hmm.
And I think that recess in between is making that peak much more apparent than on the Nano, where it's more just all the treble is elevated overall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of like a relationship of where the dips to peaks are rather than just, peaks and things in particular, which is kind of a problem when it comes to our perception of like, more or less treble, more or less bass is the relationship with these dips and peaks within a narrower window.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was also thinking in relation to like, the types of music that people like to listen to. If and I know that program material it doesn't have that massive of an effect on listener preference, but apparently it does over time, right? For how long they would listen. But maybe for people who are listening to rock and heavy metal, they would ordinarily fall within that large dominant segment, but because of let's say perfect HRTF matching, DFHRTF matching with an HD 600, for example, it's really not for them. But another person would fall into that same preference segment. Doesn't listen to that kind of music, prefers jazz, prefers orchestral music, whatever. It's perfect for them. So I mean, I don't know. Like I do think, and to your point about being sensitive to different ranges of the FR, I do think that there's bound to be disagreement, and then when between the individual and the largest group, right? But then that also is going to cause some consternation when you talk about a headphones FR deviating from the norm, let's say for the largest group, versus one that adheres to it, and that person's heard it and goes, well, I don't like it, I don't like that at all. So then you have all the noise being made about oh, Harman is terrible, etc., which is not great.
One
Well, like,
thing I would. Oh, sorry. You, Douglas.
mine was like semi related, but also semi off topic. So if yours is more relevant, you can go first, Blaine.
Well, it's about the question of whether music changes what people want. I will say that while we have a pretty good sense that music has a mild impact on like the amount of bass, the amount of treble people want boosted or cut, I would definitely be surprised if there was an intersection between song, like specific song, and how annoying a given peak is, because different songs have different instruments, and different instruments, obviously different effects, and those things mean that a peak can go from inaudible or negligible to, oh my god, kill me.
Yep.
So I would expect that that's a big factor there for like, but the thing is, those are always going to be super variable, and those are sort of like in the Olive research program, I generally kind of think that they were trying to look past things where people would want to tweak the EQ every song. Like Sean has already been super, super straight up about, we should just have tone controls on every headphone, period. And I think that's a great idea. But I think that's also basically his response to this given song is more annoying with this given tuning.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. DMS, you had a...
Yes. So I need to send a picture of my dog to someone real quick because she's sleeping on the couch and it's adorable. Okay.
Why don't you send a picture of your dog to the stream?
You know what? Here, let's just take this camera real quick. Stream, you want to see my dog? Look. She's sleeping on the couch.
Of course we do.
Oh, Puck, you're so perfect. I'm going to wake you up real quick just to say hi. Hey, pretty girl.
Oh.
All right, you go back to sleep.
Like, why are you waking me?
What do you want, father?
Yeah, that's how I woke up this morning. Like, why?
I'd have to find this, but I was recently reading a study that I thought would be interesting to correlate to read listening tests, and that was the tolerance that people have on sounds that are pleasant or unpleasant being directly affected by where their dopamine baseline is at that given moment. Because your dopamine baseline changes throughout the day, every single day. So when your dopamine baseline is a bit more stable and a bit higher, you are much more tolerant to sounds you would generally consider unpleasant.
So that explains a lot about the headphones that I don't like.
If you're having a bad day, you're going to hate it a lot more, which makes sense.
Every day.
But also, like, if you got like an hour less of sleep, or if something is affecting your diet, all of these things can affect your tolerance and perception of sound quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Headphones for dogs?
What?
So someone in chat said there are headphones for dogs. Have you tried measuring them?
Can we get a canine 5128?
In-ear microphones are the answer.
But where the fuck is the ear entrance
dogs
for a dog?
Custom IEMs.
Actually, this is
a DATS.
Here, this is a different story. I'm not going to go down into it, but I think it was Central Intelligence put a microphone in the ear of a cat once to try and listen in on a conversation, but they couldn't train the cat to actually like stay near the people. So in-ear microphones for animals are a thing.
Okay.
Animals are just terrible autonomous things. Like they're always out there trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
Except for birds. They're robots.
My dog is living her best life. She gets to eat fancy food. She probably eats better than I do.
So, what we were just talking about gets to the next topic, which is number 3, areas of research you'd like to see explored more, or started, if not at all. I'm sure, Blaine, you have thoughts on this.
I mean, explored more by whom? Like, I would really, like, my highest and, like, holiest wish would be for the audience to explore the extant research more.
No, yeah,
because I know. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people think about the science as being very incomplete, but then are also not even aware of the basics, which would answer a lot of the questions.
Yeah. So go read.
I think that interpersonal stuff is like the big thing, though, right?
What?
Like variation. Oh, we have a Tinder bot. You should probably kill that.
Oh, nice.
Good.
It's another. Man, today's been like the stream of banning all random shit.
Well, there is one person. That's still probably the same person.
Yeah, maybe. There is a study that we're going to be working on. I don't want to like reveal the details of that, but we've discussed it. Everybody in this call knows about it, and there is some research we'll be working on, which is something that I feel strongly needs to be done.
I actually don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, I lost $20 over it. Don't you remember that?
Oh yes, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember.
There
that.
we go.
Yeah. That's.
By the way, never bet against me.
Yeah, I never bet against Blaine.
Yeah, like on my Discord, I just see, I think was maybe from DMS, like sending $20 via PayPal with no context. Like, what is this about?
Yeah, sending $20 to Blaine. Yeah, you don't make bets on the headphone show because now I had to pay Blaine $20 and now Cameron has to eat a headphone.
I got to eat a headphone cable.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Get subscribed if you're not already. There's some videos coming.
Why does he have to eat a headphone cable? I missed that one.
Wait.
Because I was
Real
wrong.
quick.
That's why.
Oh no.
That's usually how losing bets works.
Yeah.
Somebody asked DMS what's the best third-party pad for a 6XX, and it's the ZMF Suede HD600 pad because it's very close to stock in terms of sound, but doesn't collapse as quickly.
So I was going to say that's probably the benefit is if it lasts longer,
It does.
Yeah,
I'm
you-
still using it, and
Yeah.
it hasn't really changed from the initial measurement that much. So I'm very happy with it.
Nice.
That would be a real, like, even if you had to EQ a little more, that would be a real improvement to the HD6.
Yeah.
Whatever's general trend of just going.
Yeah, Zach makes good pads. Thanks, Zach.
Hell yeah.
So on the original, I still want to know
study.
why you're in eat a cable, by the way, but I guess we'll get there later.
we'll find out.
No, everyone
We'll
has
keep
to
the
subscribe, and
audience
they'll find
you
out
got to
when that
subscribe.
video
You got to
comes
watch the video
Yeah.
and find out.
That's true.
Yeah.
You gotta subscribe. You gotta join the Discord. You gotta buy something on headphones.com. Only people who've bought at least $100 worth of headphones.com merchandise will get
Okay,
to see.
none of this is true. Blaine is trolling you.
That's true. I mean, I've pitched that, but they keep saying no. They're like,
Yeah.
no, that's evil, Blaine.
Exactly. See, Blaine wants to make headphones not evil, and we won't let him.
I'm showing my dog again, just because.
Hell yeah, more dogs.
I'm gonna wake you back up.
Why won't you let Puck sleep?
Yeah. He's like, why are you doing this to me?
Just
Oh,
because the internet needs to see my
That's a
sweet
very
child. She
good
turns
dog.
9 this year, by the way.
Oh.
good
Yeah.
dog.
If you know what? How many people are watching the stream right now?
175.
75.
If we hit 200, I'll give her a treat on camera.
Oh, now you
Nice.
got to get more people.
Okay.
So if you
On
get
the
your
topic
friends
of,
watching, and
old
they're
headphones.
interested in audio, yeah. If we get it up to 200, I'll give her a treat on camera. Everybody can see it. It'll be like one of those like bone things that are like dental chews. She'll be very happy. Hey, pretty girl, look at you.
So, Blaine,
But
I would
on the
like to get
topic
back
of,
to the yeah.
Oh, yes. I would like to return to the topic now. All right, so fine. Let's go back. I really think that the obvious answer for all of us, and this is what DMS was riffing on, is how much variation is there in actual individual preferences, and does that preference variation cover things that are outside of the 90 whatever percent that is FR? That's something that Douglas, that's something we've all wanted to test, right? And the thing that Douglas is alluding to is that we're thinking of basically trying to test whether there are consistent intangibles between headphones with similar FRs for a set of random, just listeners who are just given a chance to listen and say, is this a more detailed headphone than that? Is A more detailed than B? Is C more detailed than D? Whatever. So I think that the question of are all of these preferential things actually do they form as consistent of clusters on the small stuff? And is there actually meaningful variation, or is this some sort of real external to the person thing of is there detail? So I think that's a lot of it seems cool to me.
Yeah, I have some assumptions about that.
But we all do. My assumption is there will be a null result.
I'm kind of with you on that, but I think maybe for different reasons. I'm not exactly. knowing audiophiles, I'm not exactly. I don't hold the scrutinizing ability in all that high regard across that particular population. If that makes sense.
Chat just leaves at how offended they are.
Yeah, I said that as diplomatically as I could, but I
mean,
used to
I
think,
try to make chat leave every day.
yeah, I used to think, oh man, like everybody must hear it like this, everybody must think of it like this, and then you go to the various different shows and you meet people and you talk to them and you realize, oh god, everything is wrong.
That's the thing which kind of struck me, is like there's things which kind of, you'll meet a group of people who will all have a slightly differing opinion from you on something, and they will then share a similar opinion on something else which you also disagree on, and you can kind of see that even though your opinion might differ from them on something, you can either kind of see where they're coming from, or it's at least consistent within that group effectively. And then there's some people who just, you'll try something and go, oh that's really shouty or painful, and they go, oh, this is great, and it's confusing as to how we can be hearing something that differently.
Yeah,
because it's not just I prefer this, it's a you can stand to listen to that for more than 20 seconds.
That's tolerable. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean. Now I think you're right. Like I think to a large degree, those disagreements are a reflection of whichever sort of dominant subculture they are, subculture, they're part of. We, like, I might speak the same language as Clinical, for example, but that doesn't mean that, we speak the same language as somebody else, right? So Jesus Christ, Blaine. But I definitely come across that a lot, where it's like, you think that's detailed, you think that's good, even you think or is even that's tolerable. So yeah, I mean, it does seem to get, at least for the extreme examples, it does seem to be more than just preference, in my view.
By the way, we're at 185 people out of 200.
Yeah, but how many of those are just people who joined on their phone and laptop?
I'm just saying, we get to 200, dog treat on camera.
Okay,
I mean,
that's all that matters.
People.
It's just the numbers. That's all.
Yeah. It's bouncing around.
Okay.
183.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now,
hold on. I'd actually like to hear Cameron's take here, because he's been kind of quiet on that one. And I think that's an area that would be close to his heart.
Yeah, no, well, that absolutely is something which I'd love to see explored in more detail, because we have things like confidence intervals. As I said, the misconception is that the Harman target is an exact target, which it isn't, and the research doesn't say that. And anyone who sort of is misunderstanding and demonizing it for being that doesn't understand what the research is actually saying. But it also is missing some of the sort of finer grained information about what exactly, either within those confidence intervals or just very small, like we were talking about the shape of the ear gain region and specific areas there at 4K versus 3K, for example. How big of a difference is there between different people? Because, like, Andrew, you're quite sensitive to that region generally, right? You find quite a lot of IEMs shouty that others
specifically with
not.
IEMs. Yeah.
And it would just be great to have more information about those individual things, not just about whether preference exists, because I don't think it's really up for debate that it does, but just what are the specific characteristics and what are the kind of percentages of people that might fall into certain groups that that are applicable to those kind of things. That would be quite interesting, because then you could make specific products tuned more deliberately towards a particular group, or even have products which are adaptable. Going back to the DSP conversation, you could have certain things which have just 5 or 6 different options that you can pick your favorite of each one, and then boom, you've got a headphone which is really suitable for you. And that's not something which right now I think we can really do beyond just the maker of that product kind of doing what they think is best. There isn't actually really solid research on what specific things vary the most between people.
Yeah. So I mean that makes me think of a number of things, but we struggle enough already with representing, you know, the different segments and talking about whether or not a headphone is good for a particular segment. Like even in the more, you know, measurements focused communities inside of things, it's like if this is somehow outside of the dominant, you know, cluster, it's bad. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's nonsense, kind of, right? Like it's just it fits better with another segment.
Well, it might. Things
Yeah,
still can
not
be
in all
bad.
cases. Yeah, you get what I mean.
Things
though.
can
Like,
still be really bad.
say in a case where it does fit better with another segment, it's ignored, or missed. And so, you know, we struggle with that, you know, from all fronts. And as much as I agree, I would love to get to a place where we could get to a more nuanced, like, hey, this is great for this particular group who, you know, whose preference or, you know, even if it's anatomy related, whatever, varies to this particular degree. It's really difficult to do that when you don't even, like, people don't necessarily even know how their own, you know, preferences are going to show up. Unless they try something. So I think in a way it's like sound demos are the way to solve this, or to get any sort of movement on this, so people can go, oh, I like that, and go from there.
There's two things I want to touch on just because I saw comments about them. And it was related to like the studio and shouldn't we be listening to, you know, what the artist intended and this and that, which, you know, I've seen that argument before and it makes sense. There's a couple things I want to know on that though. One, I saw a comment about the Yamaha NS10, which the NS10, fun fact, there's a reason why that is like the most consistently used speaker you see in studios around the world. And it's not because of the frequency response of the speaker, it's because that speaker is very consistent from speaker to speaker. Those speakers don't have a lot of variance among them. And they tend to respond similarly in a pretty wide range of situations. So that's why you see a lot of the NS10s. The other thing is that artists generally aren't the ones doing the mixing. So during my time in the music industry, a lot of times when I would work with an artist, you know, you'd send them a mix or something like that to get final approval. Half the time when an artist would listen to a final mix to approve it, they would just listen to it on like their phone speaker or a Bluetooth phone or in their car and just be like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. So a lot of times it's hard to say what the artist intended. It's more what the mixing engineer intended, what gear they may have been using, what kind of mixing style they go for, which makes it a pretty tough thing to nail down. And sometimes artists do the mixing as well, but that is becoming more and more common these days, especially with a lot of home music producers. But if we're talking anything that's mainstream music remotely involving studios, the artist isn't really involved much in that process. So it does make it a very difficult target to hit.
We could just be like super contrarian about all things, wear only super esoteric, weird headphones and only listen to home produced, really weird, non-popular music.
And, right. Well, and there's cases though, like
I'm there, I guess.
Well, for the music section, yes, as am I.
So the Odyssey MM500 is a great example of this because it is a headphone that we know for a fact was used in the mixing process of some albums, and those albums do sound fantastic on the MM500, like better than on anything else I've listened to them on. Specifically, like the that newer Kendrick album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, sounds so good on the MM500. But there's plenty of other music that was mixed on it as well. But the problem there is that like, does that apply to everything else? And there's a lot of studios that aren't using MM500. So is that what the artist intended still? Probably not. But it's what the mixing engineer intended, because now they're selling that headphone that they mixed it with as a product.
I couldn't tell you. I've not listened to Kendrick Lamar.
It's fair.
I've aggressively
shocking news I've ever heard.
I've aggressively not listened.
Big Kendrick fan.
The chat is shocked. By the way,
Pimp a Butterfly as a tattoo.
We need 5 more people to give my dog a treat.
By the way, Jake says calling BS on that NS10 hypothesis. I've never seen 2 sets of NS10s used with the same amplifier, and the amp changes those pretty significantly.
If the amp
doesn't change the frequency response,
something's wrong.
Yeah, The amp might had like you could maybe use some amps that add some sort of distortion characteristics potentially at very high volumes. But yeah, your amps should not be changing your frequency response to the speakers.
Yeah, if your amp's changing your frequency response, it's either broken or, well, if maybe it's deliberately designed like that, but it's a bit odd.
Or it's really, really high end. There's like it's bimodal. It's either the JBL M2 or it's really bad.
We should get into Spicy Hour. There
4 more people.
Blaine wanted the big subjective versus objective throwdown because
Yeah, but
apparently
we're
people want
holding
blood.
off on that one. They do
Okay.
want blood.
Okay.
Critical is here. Hello, Cred.
Why is he
Hey,
here
Cred.
but not on the fucking stream?
Yeah.
On the
I
topic
mean,
what's up
of
with that?
on the
If we
topic
did
of
not-
old headphones, I can't see who it is, but a friend of mine just sent me this photo. So
It's not
it's
really-
not going to focus.
Yeah,
Okay.
put it. Yeah, there you go.
God damn it! It's a Stax Omega and an HE90 Orpheus next to each other, which he's got, and I'm a little bit jealous of
Blessed.
those two. That's about the most awesome old headphones that you can probably get.
Yeah. Oh, and Metal 571's here. Everyone's here today.
Hey,
Oh man. Wow. It's like
Shout
a
outs
family
to
reunion.
Critical and Metal 571.
2 of our
Yeah,
favorite
did you know that
reviewers.
Chronicle and I are both in the same Italian family?
What?
I'll just leave it at that.
Are you in the mob together?
No.
Oh, we're at 200.
Oh, we are?
give that dog a treat.
Okay. Well, hold. You guys talk for a second. I gotta go get a doggy treat.
People are
One other
complaining
thing
we
which I'd
forgot
quite like
listener.
to see. Whilst, by the way, anyone watching, put some spicy questions in so we could talk
Next,
about
we'll we'll get out the hot tub and the Jello.
I have a spicy
Hot tub and
announcement.
Jello. I mean, we
If
can
enough
Spicy
people
plan a
buy
announcement.
stream like
Project
that.
Red, Metal is going to come back to reviewing.
Oh my god!
No, that's sorry.
You're just
That's a
causing
joke.
trouble now. You're just causing trouble. Super's
I
in
mean,
the chat
that's
All
listen.
right, here we
Metal
go.
causes trouble for me. I'll cause trouble for Metal.
too.
Oh, look, we're excited here. You ready to brush your teeth? Yeah.
This is good
Here,
content.
come here. Sit. Shake. Good girl. Shake with your other hand. Good girl. All right, let me look. Let's see your teeth. Oh, look at those pretty teeth. Okay. All right, you can have a treat now. Here, there you go. Take that. Are you just gonna face away? You want to bring it back over here? No. Oh, look how happy. He's like, "Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Father." She always takes a second and she looks around the room first. She
Gotta
kind of
listen to the
inspects the
HE1.
premises. And she always takes a moment before she actually eats it.
Check that no
Make
one's
sure the
coming to
coast
see
is
it.
clear. Yeah. All right. Can we
All right,
munch
guys.
on it? A little taste there.
I'm looking for spicy questions.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right, I'll leave the camera on the dog while you guys find some good questions.
Yeah.
Super Review says, I hope the Razer Moray means that more people will stop asking me for the best gaming IEMs, and yes, I will recommend the Moray so that they stop asking.
I don't know, dude. I
think
still want
Corinne
to
said that
recommend
they're,
Logitechs.
Pretty terrible, aren't they?
I just want the Logitech to sell so more people implement that tech. You
I know
which one
very
I
little
mean.
about it. But the Razer
Oh,
Moray?
No. I don't want the Razer. Who wants the
Chronicle
Razer
has a
Moray to
spicy
sell?
question.
Where is my mad planar?
Yeah, a deep question for us all.
That is a
See,
philosophical
that's what I'm
question.
here working for. That's why I'm here on Sundays and Saturdays. I'm earning the money to build up that capital again.
Yeah.
From Chef Steve, to truly know what the artist intended, do we also need to know what drugs they were taking at the time? Probably yes, if we want to get really accurate.
Can you know what
here's
it's like to be Mick Jagger?
There is
don't
something
know.
there is
I
something
think
it is
that's
like to be
unknowable.
Mick Jagger. There is something it is like.
There was a pair of headphones I purchased years ago that supposedly was what was used during the production of Dark Side, and I can tell you this much. It sounded terrible on those headphones. But they were old closed back electrostats.
Oh wait, was it the SR something 040 or
Nope.
whatever? 4040?
They were
Wait, they were
cost closed back electrostats, and they had pads that were full of oil.
Okay.
God, Koss had the worst ideas.
Yeah, but those were used during the production, and I listened to it and was like, "Wow, this was probably advanced for its time." But it's just, even if this is what they intended, it's not how I want to hear it.
Okay, so Super has given us a topic for the rest of this once we're out of other spicy topics, because it will give us endless fodder for discussion.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, that's gonna. Oh,
But first, I want to read out here Scott Pledger's spicy take. Your headphone setup is terrible because it doesn't validate my purchase decisions.
welcome to head. Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
Super does have a
the
good
thing
one there.
is,
That's a good take.
the real solution is just not to make purchases, just steal.
I'm telling you,
Unethical pro-life
this
tips.
guy. So from listener, the Harman combined target that Resolve used. This is from from the olden days. Was easily the brightest overall Harman target in terms of bass to treble delta. Too forgiving to the planars. Thank God for 5128 DF. But that's only because you want 24 dB target. Yeah, we're not doing Harman combined anymore.
I like how we're not even looking at Douglas anymore. It's just Doug.
It's just Doug.
This is
It's
so much
Douglas.
more important.
I mean, I don't
Douglas
disagree.
Marcus.
I'm not complaining. I'm just.
I think that Supers is definitely worth exploring.
I have to
Oh
scroll
yeah,
down here.
I did want to do JDBs first though, which was what is the most overrated / overpriced headphones you've heard? It was the Focal Utopia for me. Too hot in the treble and not really impressive for the price tag. That's him,
So you
not me.
Yeah, no. But you know what's funny is none of the Utopias that I've measured or listened to have been bright in the treble. So I don't know. It could be that
I had an
the ones
OG
I'm listening
one.
to.
I heard an OG one, and I measured an OG one, and it had a treble spike that was HD 800 tier, but it had more of them.
Yeah, because like none of the ones you've seen the ones that I've measured,
Yeah.
and none of them have that. I keep trying to get them in to try and replicate that, and it never shows up. So maybe they changed it at some point, or a pad change. I don't know. But
I
I've
don't know what the
I've
difference
never
was,
had a
but
treble issue with it.
The
So-
OG one was a solid thumbs down from me. What about you guys? What's the most overpriced headphones?
The most overpriced headphone. Wow. Oh, God.
Overpriced / overrated.
Overrated.
Overrated, yeah.
Well, that'd be the HD 600. It's really good, but it's still overrated. It is overrated.
That is a terrible take.
It's overrated in certain circles. In certain
Okay,
circles,
yeah.
I will grant.
There's people who sort of say that it's like that it is the best headphone, and there is no point buying anything else beyond an HD 600, which I strongly disagree with. I also disagree with the people who say that it sucks. It's a great headphone, especially for the money, and it does a lot of stuff really well. But it's not
Yeah, it's a really
the
good
end game headphone.
It's one that I do EQ, so therefore it is not perfect. I can say that about every headphone, but no,
I have a
I'd like.
headphone in mind, but I feel like it's just going to cause problems if I say it.
Do it.
This is Blaine in a nutshell. The
let me just-
enthusiasm with
Spicy.
which
I'm just going to put it in our private chat here.
Say it, you coward.
Wait.
Someone clip this.
No,
put it
you
on
can. what-
ASR,
I'll
and,
say it. That's my take as well.
Is it your take as well? I guess. Well, I guess
Yes.
that's true.
Well, it's okay. It's not overrated anymore.
Are you not going to say what it is?
So we're talking about the DCA Expanse,
Yeah, we are.
but
no,
it's not.
I make them mad at me so often.
Speak your mind. This is your opinion. That
I
you
know.
People are thankful for your opinion. That's what counts. But I don't think that they're overrated anymore. Maybe when they were initially released.
Yeah, I think that now
Yeah.
people just kind of realized.
Yeah.
I was a bit more keen on the Expanse, to be honest. The Stealth was the one for me that I just could not understand.
Really?
Because
the Stealth I found way better than the Expanse.
I haven't spent much time with the Expanse, to be honest. I only heard it very briefly at CanJam SoCal, so I can't really speak too much on it. But the Stealth I spent a bit of time with, and it was just part of it. I found later on is just the leakage tolerance is
Oh yeah,
that's a problem. If you
Tough
hold it
advice.
in against your head, it's a lot better. But if you don't do that, it's just it felt so limp. Is the best way to put it.
500 hertz.
I really
at
like the
best.
Carina though. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with that. But the stealth, I just could not. Just
Yeah.
couldn't.
So
Yeah, Karina is
so out
sweet.
of-
I do like Karina.
So out of this group, we have Cameron's is the stealth. You choose the Expanse.
Oh no, that's not my choice. That's
Okay,
just
what
I
is your
also-
choice?
You can't just say bad headphones though. Like it has to be one that's like people think it's good and it is expensive.
Or it's really expensive.
yeah.
The Spirit Torino, is it not the Valkyria, the one below the Radiante, I think it is. Or
This is
Twin Pole.
cheating.
But is
Is
that
it
over?
cheating?
It's not a real company. It's
Is
not
that
a
something that
serious
people like?
headphone.
There's some people who are really, really into that headphone. And I mean, Valkyria, that's one where I don't dislike it. I actually really quite like it. It's also just it's a headphone which I could never spend that amount of money on and could not have it as my only headphone. But I get people who are really into that particular sound would be happy with that. Some of their other headphones, though, I just can't understand it. I just don't get it.
Okay.
But what's the most overrated then?
The most overrated headphone is DT990.
Oh, okay,
Actually,
that wins.
yeah.
Oh, come on.
No, that just wins.
The DT990 is like hated.
Yeah, for good reason.
It is
that doesn't
now.
make it overrated.
It wasn't for a long time. Same with like the M50X. There's some headphones.
okay.
which,
The
if you
M50X
go
is
on-
probably the actual answer.
If you
Yeah,
go on
that's-
TechTube, like just generic TechTube or GamerTube, there's just a million channels that are like, this is the DT990. It's the best headphone in the world that's ever been made forever, and everyone uses it. It's also the world's highest end, most expensive headphone at $150. You should buy it.
DT 1990, I think, is more overrated
That's true.
and
The
more
1990
overpriced.
has a lot of fans,
For some
and it's
reason.
not very good.
It's not.
The DT990 haunts me in my dreams. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, "Ugh, yeah."
Let's think. I said the most overpriced.
The treble
the
spikes.
Utopia isn't actually the most overpriced.
Did I just spook you? Are you okay?
Well, if you're talking about the Tournaire, then it is.
Look at this.
Well, yeah, the Tornado, but I mean, the
Is
Tornado
this our new retention hacking strategy?
It is.
Just
Yeah, here, you know what? Look,
Dog.
let's just
Dog.
take the dog.
oh yes, I can just see the retention graph just going up, 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 up.
I mean, this
There we
is
go.
really, we need to get some cats in too to balance out the cat people. Where my cat people at in chat?
Yeah.
This is my
And
child.
also, furries.
Why would
Oh,
I
are you
don't
gonna
think
sneeze?
furries are kept on by a dog?
All right, go on.
No, I'm saying you said the cat people in the chat.
Oh, I see. You mean the cat fur? I see. I get you now. You bring up furries a lot on this show, Andrew.
Only when you're around.
I see. All right.
Should we do the big question?
Well, actually, Super asked something directed at me. Do I
Yeah.
feel bad about ruining Crin's graph tool? No, I'm very happy with that change. I would
Did he
like
make
him
it
to
already?
tweak. Yeah, I would like him to tweak it so that it doesn't default to sloping from 200 if there's no base shelf. Like that's the only criticism I have, really.
Or it should slope from only when
So-
there's no base shelf. It should slope from 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my earnest take. But
what do
other than that,
people-
I'm really happy with it.
What does the community think of that?
Oh,
How's
I'm sure
the
they hate
reception
it.
been?
I'm sure they hate it. They'll get used to it. They need to learn.
Yeah. Oh, we
Oh,
lost.
we lost Cameron.
Yeah, he really didn't like it, so he's out.
I mean, I'm just throwing the ball for the dog. She's taking some of my attention.
all right.
Methinks the headphone and furry Venn diagram crossover is bigger than we think, says Cruncho.
Oh, I think
Makes-
I need to go sign for a package. I'll be right back.
It makes me sad. Both those things. So okay,
Does it make you
let's
sad because of your lack of fur?
sure.
I'm implying that you're envious of furries due to your baldness.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say this is a weird. I think it meant because I'm not a furry. We should get back to the spicy takes because this has gone off the rails.
Someone
All
says,
right, so what
should
was
I buy
your
a JBLM? Oh wait,
What
you're
was
pinning me down on this.
yeah? What was yours?
Okay, so this is a contentious take.
You have also heard The Expanse. Keep that in mind.
I have heard The Expanse. I would probably say The Expanse is the most overrated headphone that I have heard. At least it was when I heard it. I heard it and I was like, this headphone is clearly the FR I am perceiving is not the FR that the designer intended. This headphone does not sound good to me.
You were not listening as the designer intended.
Apparently. I think the most overpriced, and I think this is sort of, again, I'm going to dredge up ancient history, but remember when, if you wanted an SR009, you basically, de rigueur, you were buying like a $10,000 amplifier for it? Like the Blue Hawaii and stuff?
Yeah.
I think that was the most overpriced, because honestly, I think, like, as a system, that was the most overpriced, because that was really heavily normalized as though you couldn't use the, a high-end Stax and Omega whatever off of a cheap Stax amp. And frankly, the juice ain't worth the squeeze there. Like, that was, a ton of money for something that honestly I think was marginally better than, honestly, probably in some respects worse than the HD600.
Did you
I will confess I have not heard the Blue Hawaii.
Okay, that's what I was curious if it was like from experience that you had that take, or if it was something.
Nope. So that one's firing it off with just by eye rather than by ear.
Oh
and
man,
so I'm going to be crucified.
Yeah, you as you should be.
Coming for you.
You didn't even listen to it. For shame. Come on, man. How you know if you? All the Frank Jackson stands out there are
this is
really
tech
upset.
today says, I'm not a furry. I don't believe you at you.
What?
People are accusing you of being a furry.
Oh, that's rich. That's a little bit ironic.
Two things. One, I didn't make it down in time to sign for my package.
God damn it.
I'm
sorry.
But I did get another package dropped off, and it has this all in it. So that's exciting.
There's nothing in it.
There's nothing in it.
Honda should bring back the Honda Fit. That's my car. That's what I drive. I agree. It's a terrible car, though, but it's also a marvel. All right. Even the best IEMs costing $2K plus sound worse than HD600. How about the best IEMs costing less than 100, though?
I don't know. Don't you like the Credenza or whatever?
Cadenza 12.
Yeah.
I thought that's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my pick over 2K. That's still the more esoteric U12T.
I still really love the A6T with the middle of the three module options.
M15, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
U60
that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Oh, A6T, not U6T.
I know, but it's the same thing. Just one is universal, right?
Yeah, they're very close, but they will respond a little bit differently being the custom.
Right. In theory, I could do custom IEMs because I have those molds now. We did it for a different purpose, but
you should. They're really, really comfortable.
Or you could review the Logitechs.
The Logitechs?
Yeah, that's why I keep memeing those wireless Logitech IEMs. They have this weird auto curing tip where you insert them and then it cures itself to your canal.
Okay.
I imagine they don't sound fantastic, but it's neat.
I'm just a review pig. Just put a thing in front of me and I'll tell you whether or not it's good.
Review pig. I really don't like. I mean, we found your persona now, but I really don't like that we found your persona now.
At Munich, me and Douglas got our ears scanned, and Sennheiser's going to send us some like custom molded ear tips, which I'm quite looking forward to trying out.
Nice.
Mine haven't arrived yet. I don't actually know when they're arriving, but
so
looking forward to trying those.
So Blaine, your answer was the Stax SR09.
Well, all right. If people want me to say limited to stuff that I have heard, which is very fair, I haven't heard that system. That system is a very expensive one, and I cannot conceive of that possibly being worth it, but it's a fair complaint. Then it would be like the most overpriced would be the Susvara.
We can fight. I mean,
I mean, isn't that what we're here to do? This is Spicy Hour. I didn't say it was the most overrated. I said it was the most overpriced. It's $6,000.
yeah, but I mean, we live in a world where there's like $60,000 headphone systems.
I can buy. All right, yes, but I've never heard one of those. So I could buy
the ones
one
that
and a
you've heard.
half DCA expanses for that.
Well,
And the
one is
expanse is
4,000 and one is
insane.
6,000.
Yeah.
And
Why would you
so
buy an expanse?
That's the question.
mean,
At least with this
that's the
Susvara,
thing.
you'd have something that sounds good.
That's true. On the flip side, I could also buy. I don't know what an HD 600 costs. I got mine for $200, so I could have bought. I think it's like 300 some odd now. So I could buy like 20 HD 600s and have a not very silent disco.
Yeah, but you don't have the bass extension.
Just EQ it.
That's what I do. Well, back to my original point. Just EQ. It's so easy with EQ.
Unless you're using the ZX110s, then nothing can save you.
Well, yeah, but
Oh,
those
God,
things
yeah.
have such variable response.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, those
And-
things are awful.
Those are the ZX110. I never got why they were a meme. They have been for years, and I've
Well, it's
never
'cause-
got it.
It's because Amir recommended them. That's
No,
why.
they were. I remember acutely when I got into headphones. Somebody was like, "Oh yeah, I'm an audiophile too. I went on Headfi and someone recommended me these for as the cheap budget champions, and they put the ZX110s on my head, and I was like,
It's awful. Is just like an awful thing that I'm upset that exists.
The ZX110 is as easy to enjoy as a headphone as a voluntary lobotomy.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, we need to get into some more spicy takes here, guys. Just spicy
do.
topics.
we have
Here's
two
one.
about balanced."
So I see the one from Jenny.
Yeah, and above that, Jeff B says, "Does balance make a difference, and should you care?"
In terms of power, but if you don't need the power, you don't need
Yeah, but
balance.
the thing is, it doesn't actually make a difference in terms of power.
No,
Okay,
it
balanced
makes a
amplifiers
difference.
generally have more power.
It makes
I
a difference
have
in terms
another-
of power, all else being equal, but you could absolutely just design a single-ended amp which had the same amount of power. It's not that balanced is inherently more powerful.
Yeah, it just
Right.
means that for a given voltage rail, you can put more voltage through something in balance.
See,
There's
Balance
advantages to
it is better.
balanced, and it is for, I'd say, like DACs and preamplifiers and stuff. For headphone amplifiers, arguably there's more drawbacks to using balance than there are, like,
unless you have an
I-
A90, in which case using balance is the right way to go.
in which case you have to because you'll get a ground loop otherwise. Yeah, like in theory, technically a dual mono single-ended headphone amplifier, i.e. two single-ended amplifiers with separate grounds, would be the ideal way to go, so that you don't double your output impedance, and as long as you've got enough power, then that's in theory ideal, and you can make it actual Class A, not fake Class A, if that's something which is important to you. But for DACs and preamplifiers, mostly so that you get the benefit of noise rejection on the cable, it can make a difference.
I
So
do think
Scott
that
Pledger
using
is
balance is
actuallying us, and it's a good one. He says
Cool.
balance does not equal differential. It's true. Balance
That is
means
true.
there's the same impedance to ground on both legs of the signal lines, but headphones are floating. There's no connection to ground unless you make
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah, when they say balanced for a headphone, it's almost, well, unless they're just doing some stupid marketing stuff, it means differential. But yeah,
I know actually Bottlehead had a how to make your crack balanced, and it was just a set of resistors that created an equal impedance to ground from both the positive and negative legs.
I have a take
So that
related
is
to balance.
literally just so that you can put that word there. It's of no benefit whatsoever.
Sorry, DMS.
Christ.
What was that, DMS?
I have a take related to balance, and that's that balanced for using on IEMs is silly and pointless. Like you don't need to use your IEMs with a 4.4 or an
Well,
XLR.
Because in practice, with most like devices like dongle-y, Bluetoothy, like Qdelix, those types of things, you have a single-ended output and a balanced output on many of them, right?
Right.
And there's
You
no
really
point to the
shouldn't.
balanced one. Yeah,
I mean, if you have a balanced output, sure, use it. But
but
you know,
why?
like
I'm with
this, okay, this is a great device. This is the Quest Style M15. The balanced output on it, I could power, DMFs, planars, stuff of that nature with it. The 3.5 millimeter is all I need for IEMs. You could plug an IEM into the 4.4, but it is kind of pointless. Like,
Yeah,
let me plug it into the 4.4 and then set it to low gain and then use my listening device on the lowest possible volume so it doesn't blow up my eardrums.
And
there's maybe some
potentially higher
benefits,
noise
like if you have okay, so this is the Aston Kern SP3000, and if you use balanced on it, then it's using 4 DAC chips, and if you're using single-ended, then it's using 2. So there can sometimes be some benefits sort of upstream that's not actually anything to do with the amplification stage, and in theory there would be no benefit to having a balanced, as Douglas said, output stage for IEMs in particular, because if you're running out of power for IEM, something's very wrong.
Actually,
Yeah.
in chat, Let Sure, aka Jenny, aka shoot, what's his actual name?
Joseph.
Joseph, that's it. Joseph at Let Sure says 4.4 is better than 3.5, so that's a good reason to use balance.
So that they don't
That's
break.
not,
It's a nicer,
wrong.
it's a sturdier connector.
I like
That's
the
genuinely
connector.
a good point.
There was someone in my patron chat a long time ago whom we all know, that's no longer in there, that used to use IEMs with a desktop amp.
What?
At like a desktop amp to power them to get volume.
As opposed
That's
to
worrying.
To get
Like
Like
as a
volumes
requirement?
you would
needed, or
need,
because he thought
the
it was
volumes you
better?
would need a desktop amp to achieve.
Oh Jesus! Okay.
Someone who was playing a DT880 so loud they were clipping the driver.
because I use a desktop amp for IEMs, but that's just because that's the output that I happen to have on my desk.
Right. I mean,
Which is-
I'm saying specifically they listened so loud they were clipping the driver in a DT880, and they listened at a similar level on IEMs, if not higher, because they wouldn't clip as easily. So imagine using like an Etymotic or something like that. You're in your ears and cranking a Magni.
That's a recipe for going deaf.
By the
Yeah.
way, why do I have to
You
rely on
probably the
chat
sounds
to
of it
tell
is a
me
bit
when I
late,
have a
but-
ground loop?
Why do you have to what?
I had to. Chef Steve was like, "Someone's gear is humming," and it was definitely me. But why will you guys never tell me when there's hum on my end?
I don't hear it.
I can
It's
still
not
hear a
coming
little
through.
bit, but it's very, very faint.
I blame the fact that I'm using a Bose Bluetooth headset right now.
Yeah, it could be.
I didn't have the hearing fidelity to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least we're not trying to clip DTA80 drivers. So
Stuck in the
there's-
mud
Yeah.
actually
Good
raises
lord.
an interesting question. Reviewing headphones and IEMs without EQ in mind makes no sense. That's I think most of us here are proponents of EQ based.
No, I don't know. I can see it. I can see an argument to review without EQ. Like Kryn doesn't factor EQ into his reviews, for example, and I can understand it because unfortunately we can't expect the masses to do it unless we're talking about like true wireless devices or things that have something where you can do that. And yeah, I think it makes especially for more mainstream type situations where most people aren't going to be EQing, I do think it makes a certain amount of sense, because you're also you have more to talk about.
I think
the issue though is that, as you said, you can't expect most people to be EQing. I think you should, and if you're watching, then yeah, you should try EQing because it can make an absolutely massive and magnificent difference. But my view is that if the product has a fault, it doesn't really matter if you can fix it really easily. That is still a fault, and you need to talk about it.
Right. I think a truly great headphone responds well out of the box without the need for EQ.
Yeah, if it needs EQ,
that's different from just adjusting it to a little bit of. But see, I would go as far as to say that every headphone can be improved with EQ. So, I mean, for me, it's like,
yeah,
there are. If I were to review things without ever being able to EQ them, everything would suck. Or everything would be like some level of not great up until very few things, like maybe an HD600 and a Centara.
Right.
So my take there, and I say this as someone who doesn't use a lot of EQ, right? Like I'm too just straight up lazy. I move between different devices. I move between different sources. I cannot be bothered a lot of the time, and if I can, it's usually something very quick. I think that every headphone should be evaluated for its response without EQ, but I think that a review that does not consider EQ is a bad review, because there are some problems that are a lot easier to fix than others with EQ, and those are really different magnitudes of
I
problems.
like the
for an
way
enthusiast
you
product.
just said that, though. That a review that does not consider EQ is a bad review. Not necessarily that it's like a headphone that's super weird for its tuning that is just like perfectly fixed with EQ, and then it's like, this is a great headphone. Right? That's not what we're talking about here. It's like, let's consider now how this might perform if you add a bass shelf, for example, or if you make some adjustments with EQ.
Yeah, like a mirror.
You know, actually, I have
I
a
do the same
tangent on
thing.
this that I
We
think
agree
is
on that front.
yeah. Oh, doggo treat time at your convenience. You missed it earlier. I'm sorry,
we're
but
at
you can
200
scroll
again.
back in the stream and see it. We're at 200 again.
Yeah.
Your
Okay,
dog's
wait,
gonna
I
get
could-
fat.
Let me get. I'll give her a piece of bread. Hold on, and then I have a point I really want to
Oh.
make.
EQ equals makeup. That's an interesting take.
No, that's a bad take. That's a terrible take.
No, but someone said when I said if I couldn't EQ, then everything would just be a disappointment. Someone said, but it is. I can't find it now.
Well, there
Do you
is no perfect headphone. There is
Yeah.
no headphone which is just doing everything right.
Yeah.
And I think, as you
Alright.
sort of said earlier, I've not heard a headphone which couldn't be at least slightly improved with some EQ, because otherwise it would imply that it was the perfect headphone, and I've
Exactly.
not found that yet.
Yeah. Okay. I have a spike. Okay, we need to hear what DMS's take was, and then I have a spiky
Yeah,
take for Kat.
here I'm giving her pieces of bread. Look, she's going to be very gentle. Do you want this? You want the bread? No, you don't want the
No.
bread. Okay,
No.
she doesn't want bread right now. Sorry. I'll try
Retention
again in a
graph go
minute.
down.
Yeah, I'll try another food. Oh wait, there's a piece of bread on the floor that I gave her a moment ago. Oh, she's gotten it. All right, we got her. Do you want another piece?
She was just shy and didn't want to eat
Is
it on
that good?
camera.
Just camera shy.
Ooh, yummy, yummy. She's getting the butt end of the bread because I'm not going to eat it.
Christopher, this is the HE6 SEV2. Yes. In previous ones, I've been wearing the
Is that
HE560.
Prefer the butt end of the bread.
All right, here, have some more. There you go.
This is the heavy one. I was actually
So gentle.
so I was using it with the ZMF pilot pad that go on top, which does help with the comfort, but it doesn't actually fit because the headband is too thick.
Okay.
And what happened was I took the
You shake?
headphones off, but this stayed on my head, and I walked around my house with
Oh,
this on
show
my
me your
head,
teeth.
not noticing that I was there.
Oh, pretty teeth.
So,
All right, there you go.
until I looked in the mirror, I was like, "What the fuck?"
My hair is doing a thing. Okay, that's just happening.
Bread is not well. She's already eaten a meal and she just got a treat a little while ago, so the bread is it's a bonus. Our boy, Precog had this take recently, talking about how he didn't like headphones versus IEMs, just because IEMs you have like a lot of like multi-driver scenarios allow you for a lot of tuning and whatnot. We don't see a lot of multi-driver headphones on the market, but the same principles could apply for more fine-grained tuning with a multi-driver headphone. It is possible, but we don't see it. Why do you think that is?
Because multi-driver headphones are terrible.
As
but
are
that
IEMs.
isn't-
You've got so many more challenges acoustically speaking than with an IEM when you're trying to shove multiple drivers in there. It's just, I mean, I guess it's possible, but
I mean,
it's
you could just use a crossover with one driver, like people do with full range speakers, right? Like full
Right.
range speakers, terrible though they are, people correct their response with the baffle step correction, but then they also usually have additional correction because you need it because full range speakers are terrible. You could do the same with headphones.
Yeah.
But nobody does.
It seems like in most audio situations, though, multiple drivers produces a better overall frequency response related result, with the exception of over-ear headphones.
So Precog's take in that short is what he's saying about you have the opportunity to be more precise with your tuning with IEMs. That's true, However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be better.
Right.
Like I would argue that I have yet to find an IEM version of an HD600. I've tried Etymotic. Get out of here with that.
Right.
It's just that for me, it's like whatever is being assumed by the manufacturer is wrong in some way. Whereas with over-ear headphones, I don't have that challenge. So even though you can be more precise, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better.
Right. It's still something that we don't see even explored very often. Like once in a rare blue moon, you'll see a manufacturer come out with a multi-driver over-ear headphone, but they didn't even try to tune it remotely at all, which would be the main benefit of it. So it just flops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
So
fair.
it seems like still pretty unexplored possibility, if you ask me. Though I know there's a lot of drawbacks.
Yeah.
Toad Scoop first says analog EQ preserves the audio quality more than digital EQ. You have less control because there are not very sophisticated analog equalizers, but they don't rely on FFT and don't have its drawbacks. Digital EQ doesn't rely on FFT either. That's a completely different process. And digital EQ is, by every kind of way that you could evaluate it, better. The only situation in which digital EQ, well, might have a limitation, but then it's also one which you wouldn't be able to overcome with analog, is a very, very, very steep low pass filter, i.e. a DAC reconstruction filter. But then you can't make one in analog that is as steep as you can get with a basic digital one anyway. But when it comes to EQ, no, digital EQ is actually better, and FFT is a completely unrelated process. So I just wanted to mention that one.
So, before DMS has to go, I want to ask. I want to get a spicy topic off the ground here. In previous live streams, Blaine, myself, and oftentimes whoever the guest is, have generally agreed that we don't care about amps and DACs, or we had a similar sort of opinion, not necessarily always aligned, but I think on that topic we are generally aligned. And I want to get you've seen those live streams, Cameron, and I want to get sort of your take on that, if you have a different perspective, and then we can jump off from there.
I mean, my kind of view on DACs and amps, and I touched on this a little bit in the first audio support episode, which go and watch that if you haven't already. I do think that amps and DACs make a difference. I've done sort of blind testing, and I've got some interesting videos coming on that in the near future. So again, get subscribed to see that. I think that people sometimes have the misconception that I think they make a much bigger difference than they do. When it comes
because
to
you're the amps and DACs guy.
I happen to review more amps and DACs and stuff, but it's mostly because I review amps and DACs. It's not because I think that's the most important thing. Headphones will change your experience so much more than an amp or DAC change will be. It's not even close. My view is that basically you should spend almost all of your money on your transducers, so your speakers and your headphones and other physical room treatment if you're using speakers. And then once you are at a point where you're happy and very set on those, then look at squeezing the most out of them with DACs and amps. I do find that they make a difference, and it's something which I don't know how to word it. My personal view is that once you kind of get a little bit more attuned to some of the differences that they do make, it's a little bit harder to unhear them. And I'm sure the same is a similar story with certain things with like IEMs. Like once you kind of have an understanding and hear what BA timbre is, it's very difficult to unhear that whenever you hear it in an IEM, even though the first time you hear it, you might go, oh, well, the tuning on these is great.
Mm-hmm.
So you might even hear enough things without BAs.
Yeah, you might. Well, you might do.
Or no, that do have VAs.
This has a bit of like an interesting, there's a rabbit hole to this.
Oh, yeah.
When the first time I noticed any sort of difference in amplification was far, far before I ever started doing YouTube, and it wasn't remotely intentional. I had a set of Bowers & Wilkins DM3000 speakers. And I had switched from some Harman Kardon amplifier to something else. I don't remember what it was, but it was higher end than what I had had at the time. And it was a price jump of like, like a $200 amp up to like $1,000 amp. And I had just done it because I needed one specific interface on it so I could interface with another piece of tech I had in the house, thinking that it would sound exactly the same. And it, like, this is me not knowing anything about amps and DACs at the time. And I did that, and I was like, something's wrong. These don't sound the same. My bass and everything else just sounded completely different. And that was my first introduction of, an amp or a DAC or anything like that, potentially making a difference in sound. Now, since then, it's something that I've consistently noticed in speakers, but I find it to be considerably more subtle, if even having any effect, when it comes to the vast majority of headphones for me, as long as they have sufficient power. Doesn't mean that I don't think it makes a difference, but I think it's much less apparent.
So presumably there's something that, like, if you're having what we might say is okay, I'm going to avoid the philosophy term. If you're having a genuine experience, of whatever it is, and you're sort of reporting that experience as accurately as you can, presumably there's something that is causing that. And in the case where you notice it more significantly, there's probably an explanation, like in the headphone case, we'd be talking about like output impedance or something like that, right? Having that relationship. But this gets to something that Cameron said in the audio support video that he did recently, which is, I think your reasoning with amps specifically was that some of them have a particular distortion profile, and that that's potentially responsible for the sort of change or flavor in the sound. And this relates to something that we did when we were sort of doing that simulating amplifier distortion article, Blaine, if you remember that one. And one of the things that you generated was a tone that had we were actually trying to demonstrate the audibility threshold for third harmonic distortion, and when it's louder, you are less likely to hear it. So like when the tone is played louder, the distortion product is less audible, even though it's the same distortion product. And when playing the two tones, the louder one versus the quiet one, side by side, you could tell that it wasn't so much that you could hear audible distortion, even though it was audible. It didn't sound like a specific distortion product. It just sounded slightly like the tone was shifted. It sounded like, the tone was a little bit higher up, because we're just talking about third harmonic. We're not talking about like fifth or sixth or, super high order stuff. So what I'm wondering, Cameron, is do you think that things that are traditionally, let's say we might call them, below the audible threshold, are having some hidden effect that we're able to perceive? That might
Possibly.
be a psychoacoustic thing. We might not be able to identify it as this is a harmonic distortion product, but it might be a psychoacoustic effect or something that we perceive just in a tonal balance sense.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, this is my opinion, just based on my trying stuff and measuring stuff. And I always listen to stuff before measuring it, so that I don't get influenced by what the measurements show. But there's a few things where, like, I totally agree that if something measures very similarly to another thing in basically every way that you can test it, it's going to sound very similar. There is no such thing as magic or fairy dust, and so I'm not a believer in cables or anything, and I've not been able to hear a difference in any of those, and I've not been able to show a difference in any of those outside of situations like real edge cases like the RAL, where it's predictable, it's measurable, it's understood why that is happening. When it comes to source gear, though, I think that some of the audibility thresholds might need to be revisited. Jitter, for example, the last study, the main study that people point to with that, personally, I think there's some holes in it, and the methodology could be a lot more thorough and could be done with some more modern equipment. But there's also a couple of things, and actually I should have mentioned this during the what would you like to see sort of researched more, is changing distortion, because the products that I've got in that sounded the most distinctly different to other stuff It's not that they just had a different distortion profile. It's that the way in which they were distorting changed depending on what level or what frequency they were outputting. So a good example of this being the shit Yggdrasil. That DAC, it doesn't have crazy high distortion, and by most metrics, it should all be completely inaudible. But it's a DAC which I think sounds quite different to other stuff, and it generally has a reputation for having quite a strong house sound. But if you look at like the distortion versus output level on it, it's not a flat line. It kind of gets to about minus 60 dB or so, and then goes just all over the place. And I would really like to see some more thorough research into how are audibility thresholds impacted when what you are testing is not static, when it is correlated to something else, because that seems, just from my anecdotal testing, to be a bigger factor.
I mean, I think that's a good take. The one thing I will say though there is like we suffer somewhat by a lot of the measures that we're using being, we know, not correlated at all with audibility. It's one of the things where I've talked before about I'd really like us to start using psychoacoustic distortion measures, like really, really badly. One of the things that those, particularly the better models, tend to integrate is sensitivity to, not just here's what the, what this harmonic is at such and such time, but how much distortion you are actually getting over a period of an actual music like, or even just straight up being music waveform.
I've just got to change my camera battery. I'll be back in 1 second.
No worries. We should probably be moving towards wrapping up because I don't want to keep Douglas forever. He's already missed his package. But no, I think it's something where I would really like to see some of the, well, and it's because audibility threshold research always runs into this, right? Where we have bad metrics and then we do research on the audibility thresholds and we get a whole soup of results because the metrics are bad, because the metrics don't correlate with audibility. And we know that because we keep getting a soup of results. But then we just keep doing the same research. I mean, not solely, obviously there's a lot of good research out there, but it's really frustrating that we have such a disconnect between what we choose to measure and what we know we hear. And I think that that's where a lot of these problems sort of fester.
Yeah. I like that you said the psychoacoustic side of things, or talked about that. Because to me, that's where things get interesting and there's more room for what Cameron just mentioned about the, well, I'm not sure about the Yggdrasil in particular, but as an example, with even just the basic stuff where we're hearing, a third order harmonic product, at certain volumes, it doesn't sound like what you might describe as audible distortion. So how would you recognize it as such? But that doesn't mean that it might not be somehow some affecting your experience in some other way. Yeah,
it's possible that things could be perceived but not directly heard, potentially.
And that is always one of the messiest and most difficult ones to pin down.
Yeah.
And designing listening tests around that is really hard.
It's really difficult, yeah.
So that leaves room for amps and DACs to make a difference. But that's why I'm excited to see your the ABX stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that we'll be
get that out.
Yep.
And I'd as always, I'd love to involve myself in that. So any space that you got for me in that, I'd love to have. We should probably, before we wrap up, just because otherwise we'll blue ball people, what is, for each of us, one take of someone else here that you disagree with most? Because that was something.
I don't have
you could have more than
list of everyone's takes.
Just one that's on top of head. It doesn't have to be the one that you disagree with most. Then what's a terrible take from someone here?
That the HD800 is a good headphone.
Oh damn!
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean I'll own that take.
I know that.
I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's shrill.
You don't think it's listenable?
I wouldn't personally choose it.
I know that Andrew and Cameron both like Kef a lot more than I do.
And Blaine.
Blaine, yeah.
So okay, that's one. So that's you're just universally Kef is not as good as you guys think.
I think you can do. I think we can do a harder one than that, though. I think we can do a more. There's got to be something else that we disagree. Oh, okay. I've got one, and not the H800S, because I do actually think that is still a decent headphone. It's good headphone for a particular thing. The Rode NTH 100 is a terrible headphone.
I have it on my wall.
I never heard that one.
I think it is absolutely terrible. I think it sounds like the definition of worm poo. Sorry, listener, if you're still in the chat. And Blaine and DMS both own that headphone.
Yeah,
I use that headphone. It's ergonomic. It sounds meh.
Worm poo.
Yeah, I mean, if you this is a destructive mod, but if you tear off the front damping, it is a little bit less worm poo. But I mean, it's like you could say the same thing about like the Empyrean or whatever, right? It's ergonomic, it's warm poo, it's a
with the Empyrean
to wear.
This gets to something Cameron mentioned as well, but with the Empyrean, you can EQ that to places that you run into trouble with when it comes to the NTH 100.
I don't disagree. I think that the NTH
being very diplomatic, Andrew.
I think that if the NTH 100 were a lot more money, I'd be like, this is garbage. But it's not. It's cheap and it's comfortable, and that's really
Honestly,
all I require out of it.
The only things I would change about the NTH 100 is giving it bigger ear cups.
Okay, but what about the sound?
And I'm okay without sounds because I find it non-fatiguing. So if I'm like editing for like 4 hours straight, I will wear the NTH 100 because after that amount of time of hearing me go, I'll get really annoyed.
Snake jazz.
Snake jazz. I very much enjoy the NTH 100 for prolonged sessions because it's less aggressive in the treble, but not like super dark recessed, just warm.
More than just warm. It's very warm.
It's less warm than the Aeon Open X.
Okay, but that's a really bad headphone, though. So,
I mean, so's the NTH 100.
The NTH 100 isn't a really bad headphone. The NTH 100 is cheap.
It's just a bad headphone. Okay, it's cheap. I grant it is cheap.
What do you think is wearable at the same price and closed that sounds substantially better?
How much does it cost?
It's like $140, $130.
Well, there's the K361.
Yeah, there's the K361.
Yeah, I was gonna say K361.
Oh yeah, I'll just compress my ears into a 2-dimensional shape.
Yeah, here's the thing: the K361 is better, but it's not as comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that I prefer to it at a net at its price. And I like it.
Isn't the DT770 kind of around that price?
You liked the 700 Pro X, didn't you, Andrew?
Out of the two,
the 770 is as comfortable.
It's probably not. You're right.
The 770 is firm ear pads.
So here's the thing. I think the 770 is better than the 700 Pro X. The 700 Pro X is like both of those two new Bayer Dynamic headphones. I think are particularly cursed because they don't have cup swivel and they're very uncomfortable and they're also dull.
Oh, see, I can wear those all day.
My take is just that I can't think of a relatively cheap closeback that I would rather use than a great deal of IEMs. Like I just couldn't bring myself to do that.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we've seen as an example on this call right here. I've been wearing these this whole time because this is the most comfortable, affordable closeback that I own.
The most comfortable.
They're the QC45s, and I own them for meetings and for spending 8 hours on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, and I know Bose is definitely not the optimal option when it comes to acoustic performance, but if I want noise canceling for 8 hours straight and so I can sleep on a plane, this is the answer. And if I want to sit here, right, if I want to sit here and talk to you guys, like, I get a little bit of top pressure, but I could probably get another solid, like, maybe 2.5, 3 hours out of these before it really starts getting uncomfortable.
Good ergonomics is really underrated.
Quite looking forward to spending more time with those. I've just been using those around the house a ton.
Good ergonomics is not only underrated, it's under prioritized by manufacturers. I feel like very
100,
frequently.
1000%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that I get annoyed about is when people kind of will they'll go from going, people don't care about ergonomics enough to a headphone like the RAL CO1A. People really heavily criticize that for the aesthetics of it and saying that it was too minimalist and stuff. But it's so comfy. Like that flexible headband, it might not look as nice as a Empyrean or something, but it's so I can wear those for absolutely as long as I need, and it's.
Oh, I don't know if I could. The ear pads feel weird.
But they are rough.
Oh, really?
The ear
Yeah.
pads are a
Okay,
bit rough.
I've not had an issue with that,
But on the
Wait,
plus
which one?
side,
Sorry.
the CA1A. On the plus side, the HPTF variation is going to be very minimal on those.
It's true. Very low acoustic Z headphones.
Yeah.
Very high distortion, very low acoustic Z headphones. They're a very
I've been using
interesting.
They did sound
test.
tubey.
the RAL SR1Bs, which you can see there with I've got stereo subwoofers at the moment. That's quite a good listening experience, actually.
Headphones and subs is like an underrated, but it's good,
Yeah.
terrible. You know,
Yeah.
it's a good experience and
that's
it's
terrible.
stupid.
It's so dumb, but it's so good.
Speaking of terrible, Andrew, that headphone you're wearing has the worst Headphone headband that they've ever made.
So I actually disagree, but I empathize with that take. It's not a crazy take.
Actually, Douglas is very strong in this take. He really hates that particular headband.
So I also find it to be extremely rickety. However, it has cup swivel, and the Sindara
It does,
headband,
but it's all pain. It is designed to inflict pain on the user.
maybe just on you. For people with larger heads, it's actually all right. Whereas the Sindara headband, and I think it's also the same one that's on the Ananda. It's just like that is the clamp that you get. Too bad you can't, like, no other changes, you know. So
that's something which I really wish more manufacturers thought about or cared about when designing the ergonomics for the headphone is people with big heads. There are like the HD 800. I have to have it on the maximum adjustment, and it's just big enough.
My brother,
same with the Batiste, but
yeah,
I have like one click left.
Having a big head improves soundstage.
I'm on when I use my HD 800, I'm on the second to last click. So I do have a large head, but it's large this way, whereas I think other people's are large this way.
Yeah.
I think
mine's just large
and
that Headphone headband, I just end up with a knife right here in the middle of my head after like 10 minutes.
Oh, the top piece?
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I put the ZMF pilot pad underneath. It doesn't.
That's a good idea.
It doesn't.
All right. Here's a controversial take. I miss this Headphone headband.
Yes, that was.
I miss
it looks weird,
headband.
But it's good.
Yeah, it's ugly.
That was the best one.
This was by far my favorite.
The Abyss 1266, I ended up just taking the like O-rings and stuff off because when I wear it, I actually have to have it so that the metal headband bit is against my head. So I just put the pad on my head and then put the headphones on.
Jesus.
Because otherwise it pulls them up too much. So I literally just have to balance it on the band.
So this doesn't actually fit around the top headband, and when I take the headphones off,
that is
why is our industry like this? We pay so much money for these headphones.
Yeah,
and
it should be better. It should be better.
And yet there's things like this. This is a cheap SteelSeries gaming headset, and they got the ergonomics like almost totally down.
Okay, you say that. I put that on yesterday at a Best Buy, and it made me want to die. Just on the ergonomics. So that is definitely a thin head thing. The fat head gang does not
thin and tall head.
Yeah. We were on a particular spicy topic, which was things that we vehemently disagree about.
Yeah, I think Cameron's the only one who didn't really come out with anything there.
What was your thing?
I think the only thing is just like that DACs and amps are important. Other than that, I can't. There's not really much that I vehemently disagree with any of you guys on, so I can't.
We really need to get you to have more bloodlust.
What's your bloodlust, Blaine, that you disagree with us, or that you disagree?
Well, how much time you got?
No, but like let's say a general thing that maybe the rest of us would agree upon, that you do not.
Well, finding something all three of you agree on would be actually pretty hard.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it could be even just like opinions about a headphone or something like that.
Like individually, I have things. It's like DMS's taste in treble is an abomination, for example. Like, dude is way too afraid of treble. And also wearing too many headphones. Let's see. I think
that increases performance.
Can we get on?
I think like Andrew, you're like so lost in the sauce on minutia in headphones, as an example.
The
like,
minutia matter.
The stuff that I mean, it doesn't though. Like the stuff where I'll just be like,
it matters
this
to
is
me.
a good headphone, and then the weirdest thing to me is I'll be like, this is an okay headphone, and then you listen to like, this is horrible, and then you're like, I really like this headphone. I listen to like, this is very meh. It's like what triggers you is such a hair trigger on some stuff.
Yes, it really is. It really is.
I don't know if I can comfortably put this one on.
And that, oh God.
Jesus Christ, Douglas.
But see, what you just said there, I think, is an interesting one. And it relates to what we were talking about before with individual preferences versus general. When reviewing headphones, here's a question for you guys. When reviewing headphones, how significant a role should your experience of the minutia play?
Absolutely large.
Is in your preference for that headphone or your experience of the really small stuff that might vary?
Well, I mean, as an example, right? The DCA Expanse, it measures pretty well, reasonably well. I'd say very well.
Depends on the head.
Depends on the head, right? But let's say given the heads that we use, it's a good measuring headphone. None of us would really describe it as sounding that way.
DMS
and this is
for winter.
Yeah, and this is where us reporting that experience matters, because the flip side argument is, well, your individual preferences, your individual perception of the minutia might not be applicable across everybody, and so you should really just report how this is going to perform for the majority of listeners.
I think you should be giving the more low level information, and because otherwise people aren't getting all the information that they could be gaining. I think it's important to mention to people who genuinely might not know that something which you are describing, they might not have the same experience. But
because then we can get into a situation where it's like, this is a great headphone and it sounds like shit.
I think realistically, to say that a reviewer's own preference, or not even preference, but just your experience and the way that you experience things can't come into play would be ridiculous, because you can't avoid that. Otherwise, give a frequency response measurement and then call it a day. It's the main thing is that as long as you're consistent, because
I'm sorry, we're having
less and less of his face is becoming visible as time goes on.
Oh God.
I have comments on this also.
He's cocooning.
Yes, you've been deep in thought. I can't take you seriously like that.
If the rest of my headphones weren't at my office, I would cover my torso and arms also.
No.
So I have to do this to breathe. Jesus.
We'll do that. We'll do that when you come out next
for your art.
When reviewing, you have to mention all of the downsides, even if they're not downsides to you specifically, because they could be deal breakers to someone else. I think that's kind of a difficult one.
You've got to give as thorough as possible an explanation of what you are experiencing, so that people can get the most information possible. You have to be consistent, and as over time, people will kind of work out where their preferences lie in relation to yours. But just shying away from telling people stuff because they might experience it different would, I think, be doing the viewer a disservice. Mm-hmm. It is your job to provide that information.
It is a data point of HRTF and HPTF affected results. Right.
Well,
it's
and
just a subjective one. Yeah. Of course, it's a subjective one, but it is an important one, I think.
All right, we're gonna do it this way.
I mean, if you had them a bit longer, then it would be.
Yeah. Blaine is becoming objectivist, Zeos.
What do you? What?
Blaine has told me that there is no such thing as objectivists or subjectivists, and that seems like a good thing for you guys to argue about for a
That's
few
true.
minutes.
No, actually, Blaine, we agree. Completely agree
I
with
was
that.
using the APX 555 as a DAC into a tube amp the other day, and that's probably the most like contrasting thing you could do in terms of objectivism versus subjectivism.
Oh, you should film that. That sounds awesome.
It does, but I will stand by. All right, so there is such a thing as subjectivist, right? Like,
Yeah, they're in a very weird corner and they just play amongst themselves.
well, yeah, I mean, there's a subjectivist in the sense that there's someone who literally doesn't believe in any facts external to their perception, but that's a
I'm here
soul.
to judge your takes.
No.
Like,
So, I mean, in a
Please,
sense,
someone
there's-
just take a screenshot of that. Just have that as the.
oh,
caption.
I'm
in
sure
a
we're
sense,
gonna
I'm
get a
here
lot
to
of
judge your
screenshots,
takes.
and I
Blaine, it
live
is
for
If you screenshot this, tag me on Twitter.
Blaine, your
Just to
take
say,
here is one of semantics, but it's one that I agree with.
Well, I mean, I really don't think it is though, because like a lot of people treat it like people who are subjective, like Cameron, right? Like Cameron is a subjectivist because he's heard a difference
I'm
between amps and decks.
Filthy subjectivist.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what does that mean? Does that he had an experience? I've had an experience of hearing a difference between amps and decks. Now, I've subsequently concluded that was because of level mismatches, and I have replicated that. But whatever. Was I a subjectivist temporarily? What does that mean? Does it mean
No,
that you've had an experience? Does it mean that you don't believe in any objective reality? It definitely doesn't for him.
Right. There are definitely, yeah. So for me, this whole category of like, you know, everybody except for the solipsists is very large, and we can fall, you know, in somewhere in there, right? But there are also people on the extreme ends of that where, oh, none of the science that we're talking about, none of the orthodoxy is correct, even though there is still something there that is contributing to this, and we need to figure out what that is. Then there's the other side where it's like, no, this, you know, we have the science, we can talk, we can show whatever, we have measurements, frequency response data, etc.
Well, I think the other end would be I have one measurement, therefore all experiences in contrast are just delusion.
Well, I think you end
think-
up with a few extreme peoples on either side of it, but that there's
Yeah,
a lot of people that actually are in the middle ground that identify a little bit more in either direction because they think that there's only two sides to it and that there's not really a big gray middle area where most of us actually reside.
The thing is, it's not gray or middle area, because the thing is, the people who are at the far extremes are just dumbasses. Like, it's not a middle ground. It's that there's
I think we can
idiots
agree
on
on
both
that. I
sides.
think,
Wait, and
yeah.
you're saying that we're not? I take offense to that.
No, we are
Yeah,
we are
you're-
the hard center. We are the
We're
extreme
dumbasses,
center.
but we're at
I'll
least we're
have
not
you know
dumbasses
that I am a
about that.
dumbass for a living.
I've never heard a difference in something that I wasn't then able to measure some sort of difference in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think the phrase "if it measures the same, it sounds the same" is absolutely true. The problem is that people use that phrase to describe it has the same synad number, which does not mean that it measures the same. You can have the
Well,
same
and
synad number and behave
it's audibly
very differently in
transparent, the
so
same.
many different ways.
well, and if it measures the same is a really complicated sentiment, right?
You'd really struggle to find two things which measure the same, even
yeah, you won't
especially
find two
often a small
cables that
amount.
measure the same across all parameters.
Especially with headphones too, though, because
measure exactly the same. Let me know, because
yeah,
that's a tough one.
So-
the thing that I am on my hobby horse about is the treatment of headphone measurements as if it's truth in all conditions when it's really just truth in a particular condition, and that's why I'm so excited about what we're doing with the multiple heads.
Yeah, I mean, it's why I really
Without
love
the context, that sounds weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, but no, I think it's going to be, I think putting to bed the entire concept that there is such a thing as an objectivist, someone who believes that there is no such thing as a human experience that contradicts what you get on one particular shot, like graph, who isn't just a dumbass. Because those are the people you don't like. Those are not people you see in the academia.
Yeah.
Douglas says he has to run, but he is hosting. Can one of us take over hosting?
No.
I don't know if I leave the call, if it will end the call or not.
Oh, well.
On that terrible
wrap up and then
disappointment.
Yeah, we
Okay,
should
so
probably wrap
here's
up
the
then.
thing. It might end, but it also might not end.
Okay,
This
so
this is kind of like a quantum physics problem.
Now,
so
here's the thing.
someone
I'll leave
before
the
we
computer here streaming, but I'll leave the call. Will it
Okay.
continue?
The stream is in quantum superposition.
okay,
So-
I think that it's probably for the best
It's
if
Schrodinger's
we wrap
stream.
it.
No, here's the thing. We could just see if it ends.
No, I agree with Blaine. I think this is a nice segue to
Our
the
sponsor.
end, the end of all things.
Yeah, I have to go to
Don't
the
you dare
UPS
say
store
LTT
before
store.
they close.
God damn.
You're the one who said LTT store. I said headphones.com.
Get your
Okay.
bottle of water at
All right.
Headphone Store. We don't actually sell that.
You can all just
yeah.
plug my
Why
store.
don't we
That's
sell
fine.
that?
So,
Bottle of water.
thanks to everybody for tuning in the live stream. Thanks to the guests, of course, Blaine, Cameron, and DMS. And then, of course, big thanks to headphones.com that makes all of this stuff possible. If you want to check out our written material, that is up on headphones.com. The audio files, check out our forum, linked in the description, and also our Discord, where you can tell all of us that we are wrong. With that out of the way,
Takes.
yeah, also for more spicy takes. We will see you guys in the next live stream.